Okay, welcome to the 11th common session of Sunoikis' Digital Classics 2016. Today we have another guest from France. Last week we had Professor Michel Brunet from Lyon, but today we have Professor Berra from Paris. And I'm happy to say that today we have also his student, so he is going to present with his student. And the topic of the common session of today is the Odyssey. So Professor Berra is working with his students in Paris for annotating name entities in the Odyssey and also producing a translation alignment. And as far as I can see in the class outline in GitHub, this is a joint project of two universities, Paris, Paris 8 and Paris 10, and this is a part of the two courses, two master programs for Classique et Numérique, so it's good to have both classics and digital humanities. So, but now I can welcome Professor Berra and his students. Welcome to Sunoikis. And I think you can start. You have to unmute yourself because I can't do that.
That's it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. That's the ritual question. Okay, so we are together, being broadcasted, and I will share my screen, and I will try not to be talkative, because the aim is that all of us, that is, there's 6 of us, are going to present our work. It's very much a preliminary report on something that is in progress, and we will dwell on issues mostly, more than results, for reasons that will be quite clear. So to present ourselves, I will use the screen sharing, okay? Like this. Yes, I know.
Okay, I can see the slides, Aurélien. Yes, it works.
Okay. So this is the credits page of the blog that we have online at hypothèse.org for the master course, which is called Classique et Numérique, which is classical and digital. And so we were 9 students and me for this year. It's the 2nd year that we've been running that program. And so 6 of us are present today. You can see the names Cyril, Sixtine, Sarah, Antoine, Simon, and Rossini are today in the room. Well done. Not Simon. No, Simon is not. Okay. So what I want to say as an introduction is that the project is very open from the start, and it went even further away from the route we had planned than we could expect, because it's very much about collaboration. So our session will be less about named entities and notations in the end, will not be at all about translation alignment, you will understand why, and quite a lot about actually experiencing the life of a project and collaboration. So the blog post in which we had announced the project was called Notre Odyssey, so that's why the session is called Our Odyssey. And I have to say that being in charge of this presentation is very much part of what I expect from the students, because I think it's a digital classics experience for them. So please, this is very experimental for us, bear with us, and ask any questions if something is not clear or everything happens. So perhaps if something is interesting to you, please don't raise your hand, but ask a question. To present the master program, I will not repeat what I said in Leipzig for the Sunoikis' Digital Classics Planning Seminar last December, because the slides are on the wiki. So if you are part of Sunoikis and watching this, you know what I'm talking about, and if you don't, you have the resource online. The only thing I want to show is the structure of the MA program, and more precisely the digital humanities component within the program. we have 4 semesters, and the first one, Digital Humanities 1 and 2 of each year, is a practical course, but mixed with actually lessons and more general introductions on history and theory and practices of digital classics. And the even semesters, so 2 and 4, the one we are in now, are collaborative and personal projects. So what is striking in this screen is that you have a difference in the figures, and we only have 12 hours for the projects. That's really not enough, obviously, for a project like the one we're talking about today, because we have to work with others, and this is why we actually merged the collaborative and the personal projects. So we used the 12 sessions, actually, and a bit more, because we went to other seminars. To present what we did in the first semester, quickly, and explain you why the project on the Odyssey was the continuation of what we had done, Cyril has a few words to say. So if you go to the blog, you see a program as well. You can.
During the first semester, we have done digital humanities with various items. Every data was stocked on Dropbox. We have explained why we were interested by digital humanities, and that the report with literary studies. We have examined databases as TLG, which signifies Thesaurus Linguae Graecae, Perseus Digital Library, and PHI Latin, classical Latin text. We have done annotation with an extraction of text of philosophers as Plato or Herodot, and we have worked on Notepad. We have been initiated to Pelagios, who signify enabling ancient geodata and geosystem.
Right, so this was quite a bit about text, whether textual databases or editing text, because the whole framework was more or less introducing the scholarly editing practices, going from how to get texts online and what to do with them, from plain text to HTML, via Markdown, which is very lightweight formatting language, and markup language, and then TEI XML. So the second semester is always about projects. Last year it was about Pelagios, and actually contributing to Pelagios for Rutilius Nematianus Dereditos II, so his return to Gaul was the whole collaborative project for last year. And this year, Recogito in some way and Pelagios are in the project, as you will see, but it's not just about feeding the database at all. A few words about the origin of the project there. It's a project, so that was last year, about Rutilius Nematianus. Yeah. The project was born because I met Arnaud Laborderie, who was attending seminars. He had been for a few years about digital humanities, and he works at the Bibliothèque Nationale de France. He's in charge of digital resources, digital exhibitions, and he's the one who produced, for example, the Candide ebook that the BNF was releasing, had released perhaps 3 or 4 years ago. And he had been part of the Homer exhibition in 2006, so that's 10 years ago. This is what remains online, the digital version, but there was an actual exhibition on site as well. They have this French version and an English simpler version as well. And it's very much about exploiting the data they have at the BNF with images of manuscripts, artifacts, or also pedagogical resources, and putting them together to deal with the theme of Homer. And there was, of course, a big part of that exhibition about Ulysses. Why? Because it's attractive. It's something that people will go to an exhibition to hear about. And same thing online. That's the kind of resource that teachers, for example, can use. So this is quite different from the resources that the BNF now has 10 years later, including the evolution of Gallica, because we have been entering, obviously, in the linked open data era, and cultural heritage it's a huge concern for an institution like a library. And the idea, the project suggested by Arnaud Laborderie is actually rooted in that concern. He wants to make it possible to go to certain websites of the Bibliothèque Nationale and put together the resources that are being visited and extract an e-book, for example, that would keep the traces of what you have seen. So it's a kind of a portfolio or a documentation that makes it possible to have a memory of cultural practices. That's technically and culturally a huge perspective, and this is partly what he started with when he announced this Odyssey édition numérique augmentée project. So the frame is this Creatique institution, which is about innovative pedagogy, let's say, digital pedagogy, and this is actually a very flexible frame, because they call it a workshop, a laboratory workshop, and students who are just willing to participate for one semester work on one project with professionals and a couple of teachers, one of them being Arnaud Laborderie, who supervises this. So from his last presentation of the project, I will just extract, to give you an idea, the teams. So ours is on the right. On the left, you have the other master course at Paris 8. And you see that there are fewer students, and they have a very different profile. They work on web technologies or design, or actually they are doing programming. And last aspect is that there is a team in Athens as well, but we won't deal with that because it's not something that we're involved in. It's just another part of the project. We'll just mention that. And the objectives, as you will see if you go back to that slide that I'm not going to go into in detail, was to work in three directions, I would say. And the next slides sums it up. To work on the corpus, on the interface, and in the perspective of mediation. So we thought, when we started, that we were in charge of the corpus. That is, we would feed the projects with text, IDs for links between texts, and coding in text so that they can be visualized, aligned, etc. And that the other team would actually work on the interface. And this is partly what happens, but it's more complicated and hence frustrating and interesting. And the third bit is actually, I think, taking over. We just realized that it's about mediation, which is interesting, but it's not something that we used to do. We're used to doing, because it's about having a broader audience actually engage in some way with ancient text, and in this case with the Odyssey. So what we could ask is, in the end, is it still an edition, or is it something else? Is it an exhibition, like the one 10 years ago at the BNF, from which we had the right to extract any data or images, for example, that we wanted? Or is it, in the end, an app and an experience, the whole project, an experience in responsive design, because it's going to be something on mobile devices with cultural heritage materials, which is not what we were expecting to do as classicists, actually. So our understanding of the project has been shifting, has evolved in the last, well, for the last 3 months, quite a bit. First, it was about mapping the Odyssey. So I'll just show you what Arnaud Laborderie was starting from, a map like this, which is a sort of modernized, nice digital infographic version of the hypothesis that someone like Victor Berra had done. So you take the Odyssey, you make the assumption that Ulysse is actually a sailor and going from one point to another, from one place to another. So it's nice because you can sort of suggest that the user of your website or app is doing something which is a bit like what he was doing, going from one place to another place, from one page, from one landscape to another one. But as classicists, of course, we regard this exactly as we regard this map. That is, it's nice. This is a mid-19th century representation of the wanderings of Telemachus and Odysseus and Ulysses. And clearly to us, it seems very naive. This is not current scholarly work, because you take you take place names, you map them on contemporary cultural realities, and you just say, okay, so he was there, and the only problems you have are micro problems, details about geography or point of view for that or that island. Whereas the whole problem to us seems to be culturally, what does it mean to have Ulysses sail and go from one place to another and go to one semi-real place and then to an imaginary landscape and then meet people that are linked with the gods, etc. So how do you actually include that cultural dimension and make it possible for the reader, user, not to be misled? That's how we feel, like some scholars can have been. So that's a 19th century map, and that's a very, very influential in the end map by Victor Berra, who was convinced as a scholar, that's one of the main things he did, that he could go on site and decide where Circe and where the Cyclops were, etc. And Jean Cuisinier, who's an ethnologist who was born in the late 1920s and still alive, has been doing all this like 15 years ago, again, with more means and more intellectual, anthropological background, but in the end, it's the same kind of project. So one question we had was, for example, could we do something else? And I was surprised and pleased to have Rossini, who is with us, try something very different. So I will show you this just for a minute. That's not something that we actually intended. Can you see that?
Yes, Aurélien, I want just to say only one thing. So I'm very, very happy that you are mentioning, well, La Bibliothèque Nationale de France, so the involvement of libraries. This is very, very important in general, but especially now that we are doing this digital work. And this is a topic that we have been discussing a lot, not only within Sunoikisis, but in general in our seminars and workshops, because nowadays, as ever, of course, the involvement of libraries is important as repositories of digital data. So this is an old model, especially when we talk about the Odyssey, the old Alexandrian model, how to edit, how to work with Homer and the Homeric text. So I'm very happy to see that, and that you mentioned this project, the original role of the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, and in general this work. So sorry for this interruption, but I think it's very important because this is a very important topic that we are trying to show.
Yeah, and last week we had a seminar about the project, and that's one of the topics we discussed. And basically we see things this way. The right way to do it, especially on a digital medium, is to have the collections being curated by specialists, but also used by students and scholars. And if you don't have the three of them, something is not working.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
I agree.
So that would be ideal. Rossini, will you say a word about, so what we've been seeing is Google Earth.
So hello, my name is Rossini, and my personal project is the presentation of the Odyssey journey to his way back to Ithaca. In order to achieve it?
Yeah, no, it's here.
Okay. In order to achieve it, I used the virtual globe program to be Earth by creating a dynamic map and not just a typical traditional one. As regarding to the methodological steps that I follow, first of all, I made the biographical research in a number of international resources and the results of Bella's Incognito. So I used to create two versions of the journey, one in the Mediterranean Sea, but you can see with the yellow place marks and the white road, and the second one with the sorted of the Atlantic Ocean. Red place marks and blue. I also added the corresponding passages of the Odyssey as comments. The final result video, that now is also being found in YouTube, was being made with the use of the free screen recorder. Clearly, this project that I offered is not entirely unique, but I think that it serves as a window to an understanding of the journey of Odysseus inspired by the digital humanities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rossini. So I think it's interesting to show you this because it's very recent. Rossini just showed me that a few days ago, and it's not something that we've done together, and it's not automatic. That is, it's a proof that it's difficult to actually do linked data, even in a small group, in the sense that if Rossini used the data we all have curated on Recogito, so it is using collaborative work, but then she re-entered everything manually without telling anyone on Google Earth. And the point is that this is interesting. We could make a pedagogical, scholarly use of things like that, thinking about the difference between the maps I showed before and a dynamic map like this one. For example, there are two alternative routes in this one, because for several locations, Rossini had the impression that scholars had been diverging, so there are several routes, and that's interesting. But we can't take these data and make anything with them. It's not been automatized, and it's not repeatable as well. So the idea for the project, when Arnaud Laborderie and the Paris 8 people started it, was to have several stops in Ulysses' route, in Ulysses' sailing, 15 of them as steps of a travel, which is the application or the website. So what we did then is that we got organized. For that, Antoine, can you just...
Yes, so we used 4 different sort of tools to get organized. First of all, Dropbox to share data with ease and instantly. Then the Trello, which is something online to organize the work and have access to it all the time, to give guidelines, subdivide the team in different subgroups. We also used Omega, which is some sort of online picture library with all the required information that are stored along with the pictures. And finally, we used Recogito, which is obviously for location annotation, and map the Odyssey as Mr. Berra already explained.
So yeah, so that's about project management, task lists, and metadata with Omeka. We'll show you a couple of screens. Recogito you know well now, but we'll tell you how we used it actually. So there are things we did all together, and that's Recogito, annotating in Recogito. The nice people at Recogito were agreed that we could have our Greek text online because there was only an English version of the Odyssey, so they kindly added it. We took it from the Perseus library, naturally, and it went there to the Homer section Odyssey in Recogito, and we started annotating it. Not all together, really, because two of us in the groups were only studying Latin and not Greek, so they couldn't actually tag the text. And one question that has to be mentioned here is, why did we start tagging the Greek from the start? Is it the right choice? Well, it seemed obvious to us because, you know, we're scholars, so we're working with the ancient language. And then we realized that for some users, it might have been more practical to tag the English or to ask them to have the French version online so that we can work on it. Because collaboration is also about, you know, deciphering what people tell you. That will be what we will say about email communication, but also just being able to read the text. And if we send ancient Greek to the people of Paris 8, they can't make anything out of it. So, and it took a few weeks to really understand the implications of that. So we annotated the text. As you know, you can spot the place names, and when you select them, they become actually annotations in the text with suggested matchings in the gazetteers. So that's the final, well, current map with a few stray points, as you can see still. And this is showing a big revelation that the Odyssey is about Greece and the Mediterranean. Wonderful. But so that was about 400 place names, and we could extract the CSV data. That's what people at Paris 8 will use to get the coordinates, because in the end, as I will say, the map will be used in a very limited way, but what they will need is the geographical data. So the whole layer of information that the gazetteers can bring, the toponyms in several languages, the state of verification, the vetting, etc., is something that we've done but won't really use. And same thing for the text. We will use annotated text, but the French versions. So we also have that nice annotated Greek with place names, but this will not be called by any program for that project. Okay, to go on, now from the start what we did is that we divided the work between two groups. It was not that clear-cut, but we tried this way to have a group working on text and a group working on images and cultural heritage. So about text, could you please step this aside? Yeah. 16 will tell you more about that. 16, and it's with Simon, who is not with us. Yeah.
So I'm going to speak about the work of, in the name of the group text, and I'm going to speak about the way we use textual resources to incorporate them in the project. So the first issue we encountered was which translation, French text could we use? On the one hand, we had Philippe Jacotet, who's a famous contemporary poet, who translated the Odyssey in a beautiful French version. But we can't use it because of copyright questions. He's still alive and it's not free yet. So on the other hand, we had to pay attention to another famous translator, Berra, who composed the translation almost a century ago, which facilitated the use of it. So nevertheless, Berra presupposed that the Odyssey was the record of ancient Venetian stories. So he saw that most of the Odyssey's episodes were more or less true facts, that could be related to a specific and accurate place. He went as far as visiting himself the places he considered the text referred to, and finally established a map of the Mediterranean Sea, which we saw earlier. So using his work can be interesting, as interesting as dangerous. So he studied the way he saw the ancient texts were than just more the way he saw they were than they just are. So on the contrary, we wanted to establish a presentation of the Odyssey that would be the most scientific and attractive for outsiders. In these conditions, we thought that the Greek text should be incorporated in the textual presentation of the Odyssey in regard of its French translation, plus sound design for the site. Sarah will talk about it. Even if the people can't understand it's a real problem, we thought that it should be more strategically accurate and interesting to put the text side by side to bridge the gap between the original version and the different translations. Then we had to decide which part of the Odyssey we were to use. We chose the Circe and Cyrus excerpts, included in the part of the story where Ulysses speaks at the first person. The goal is to represent these episodes through Ulysses' mind and point of view at first. As the textual resources are specified, the point was, how should we impact on this in order to make them available for both digital works and public exhibition? We employed TEI, XML, to shape it, like first name tag for characters, place name tag for spots, and SP rag for speeches. So to make a presentation of the text, to enhance, highlight the text, especially the proper names and the dialogues, and as we said a moment ago, to bridge the gap between the ancient and the new and French version. That is all there.
Okay, right. Yeah, so I can add just a word about the XML, is that when we started tagging the text, two people, especially Simon and Cyril, did it. We thought that this would be really exploited, transformed, and used on a website. And it turns out that that's not what they're going to do at all. So part of this reflection and this encoding is not going to be used in a traditional way. So we think that there will be a minimal exploitation, like highlighting, that is coloring place names and things like that. But in the French bits that will be actually given to the reader to read, the encoding will not allow anything sophisticated. So it's one of those cases in which you have a disproportion. We have a very, well, quite a heavy and interesting and semantic encoding, and then you have something that is a rather banal rendering. So we'll see, this can evolve. One thing that we don't know how we could have done better in this framework with a collaboration is giving an account of narrative structures, because we chose to concentrate on 2 episodes, as Simon and 16 said, because these are, well, very interesting to the people in Paris 8, and probably are among the most interesting for people who will use the website or the application. That is, it's interesting to see something about Circe and about the sirens, because it's spectacular, and you already know that this is something that there is in the Odyssey. So it's for the sake of prototyping and for managing the project in a limited time. The interesting question of how you deal with the fact that Ulysses' narration is not the only narrative device in the Odyssey is something that we can't really deal with. So there should be something in the introduction of the project that you will see in a moment that makes it possible to understand these narrative aspects, but it's going to be very simple. And one of the resources, the references we found when we were thinking about the project was something called La Bibliothèque de Circé, and this is sort of what modeled Arnaud Laborderie and our reflection on the topic. How do you make it possible to have something intertextual? But intertextuality will be limited again in this phase of the project. So now about images. So it's just a couple of slides because it just happens that the people who were more in charge of images are not with us today. So to explain the principle of Omeka is not necessary here. You know that it's about metadata management, and that you have basically the doubling core categories embedded in that content management system. So it's about structured metadata. That was an interesting experience to make it more concrete what metadata were, because we had been talking about that with TI encoding in the first semester, for example. But this becomes real when you know that you are gathering information from the web and from several library or museum resources, and that you have to actually remember and communicate with other people of the team what the information you have, the images you have are, and how they can be used. So at some point we had this screen, and for example, the very first item was about the open data at the BNF, and you see that you can have all kind of informations like this. We used it in a very simple way to gather resources, and what we'll do in the end, so that they can use it for the sirens section and the CSV thing, is that we'll group the curated clean data in one collection, and from that collection, in one of the output formats you see in the screen, probably just Omeka doubling core XML format, they will download this and use it. The restriction that the people who were in charge of images were very aware of is that the online collection in which they found interesting things were, of course, under copyright, and they couldn't be used. So we were very happy to have the BNF resources already, so that's quite a wealth, but not anything could be used. And we'll talk in the end of the presentation about what we know we won't do, and this is part of it, clearly, this issue of the rights, even in a pedagogical perspective. So among the things that we didn't know first and we will or might do, Sarah, could you say a word, please?
Yes, the advantage of making a digital edition is that we're not bound to stick to only present texts, but we can also add images, as we said, or a map, or I thought about sounds, because the Odyssey is, of course, poetry, and the Greek poetry, as you probably know, is about metric and follows strict rules of scansion. So we thought we could add some sound with, for example, someone reciting the epic text, especially for the passage of the sirens, because it's shorter, so it's maybe easier. And we also thought about the formula verses because it's really what structures the whole form. And so the main question about it, it's still in project because we don't really know how to integrate it to the final realization, and we don't really know either for whom we will be doing that, because if people we think it's an experience to hear Greek poetry recited, but yes, the question is who will understand and how to present it with a translation or with the Greek text under the spectator or the user's eyes, and that's it. So maybe just before the rest of our presentation is more about our own experience of the project. So maybe we can just check the questions.
Oh yes, if someone could have a look. Yeah, we're very organized, and someone should see there were questions. Do you have questions actually? This is not working. Okay, so Monica, we're relying on you.
Yes, I don't see questions in the chat, and also looking on YouTube. As for now, no, we don't have questions. I don't know if other participants in the Hangout want to ask questions at this point. So well, thank you, Aurélien, because really we can see really how we can work with this text. So we can, yes, the map, we can produce the map, and I'm happy to see that, well, Pelagius and Recogito, yes, are two tools originally developed for geographic text, but now we are asking them to annotate many different kind of text. For example, I annotated the Marmorparium, an inscription, because of course is producing maps of literary text is very, very useful, and and then of course images with the Odyssey. So multimedia production. So I don't see questions, so if you want, yeah, I think we can go.
Yeah. And maps are actually a big topic here, because we thought it would be central, and in the end it will not be. But Sarah? So the heading was things we discovered on the way now.
Yes, we discovered a few things on the way in this project. And most of the things we discovered were, in fact, problems and difficulties, especially because we were two teams, not knowing each other before this project, the creative team and us, and the fact that we had different schedules, that we had some problem with communication, and we didn't know each other, so email communication was not really the most efficient way to communicate. And we only had 3 joint seminars, so it was a bit short, and only one of them was really a common working session. So yes, it took a certain time for both teams to understand each other and to start working together really.
Plus, simply they started later. So for some weeks actually, we thought about the project. We started gathering data, text, images, and we didn't know at all what someone would do with them, and that was quite problematic.
Yeah, the other problem was that the creative team is going to work in collaboration with a team in Athens, and on a modern Odyssey, and we don't know at all how it can be integrated to our digital project, or if it can be integrated to our project. Because we may have a problem of coherence of the whole project with that, and so we have sometimes goals that are not really the same between the two teams. Another problem was the question of the user experience, because at first we thought we were doing a digital edition, and finally we are making something more like an iPad app. So it's not really the same thing at the end, and so the problem was, of course, who will be the user of that. Because an edition, we were targeting more scholars, and now we're targeting a bigger public. The question is also how free is the user, because the type of project we are realizing is how can I say that?
Perhaps for them to understand, you can just say that the way it is set up in the end is that it's a kind of scroll. We'll show you the thing in just a few minutes.
Yes, it's a kind of scroll.
You just go through a page, and going through, you discover the steps of the travel, which means that you're not going to choose, at the moment at least, you're not going to choose where you enter the Odyssey, but it's going to be linear. And getting something linear in the end with the digital media seems to be a disappointment. So how do we go beyond this problem? Because web design being central now, we don't know what the scholarly aspects can be. Yeah.
Yes, and for this problem about the scroll and the linear aspect of the whole project, we made thought as using the map as a table of contents, so that the user will be able to choose a passage or an episode of the Odyssey and go directly to what interests him, and not just follow the scroll. And yes, not being bound to follow the scroll. Yes, and the problem with the scroll was that we just didn't know what it was at the beginning. So we discovered it quite late in the in the semester. And it was we had no way to follow really what they were doing, so we discovered it during the joint seminars, but I said it, there were very few of them, and so we just didn't know what we were working for quite a long time.
That is the central design idea of that scroll. Is what they called a bande défilée, which is a pun on bande dessinée. So it's a scrolling medium for something like comics, because some digital comics have been using it. It's quite a recent term, and it's based on the technology of parallax. We'll show you that. You have several layers of content in HTML with JavaScript events, and basically it's what appeared on smartphones a few years ago, which makes it possible to have your images being wobbly when you move. You have things that happen on your screen depending on the position, and this can be the same with several layers from the on screen from the pointer or an iPad, obviously.
Aurélien, I like this idea a lot. So maybe, given that you mentioned a fundamental point, so the props of scrolling, we like to scroll, but the problem is that in this case we still depend on linear text. So, and this is in some way a problem, especially with a text like the Odyssey, which was devised, well, not to be read, but to be listened and not to be read in a linear form. So is it possible to, I don't know if you have something to show, but that's the thing, so to jump to different parts of the text.
Yeah. That's the next point.
Okay,
so,
excellent.
2 episodes, and the CSV episode and the sirens, including a possible branching project on virtual reality in meeting the sirens. So one student doing really computer science might do that. That could be interesting. And both these pages about CSV and the sirens are in the prototype, are pages you can access from that scroll. So the scroll is based, so this is based on a slideshow that some students from Paris 8 used last week at the seminar when we were talking about the project. And they wanted a graphic universe like this. So what they did is that they chose motifs that are used in Chios. Why Chios? Because it's Greek, and because it's where Homer was born. And this is what they told us. So that makes collaboration a very concrete subject, you know. How do you respond to someone who says, this is where Homer is born, so I'm going to use this illustration? And we learned reacting to this proposition because we realized that we did need these kind of motifs then in the whole scroll. So that was an interesting idea, regardless of where Homer was born. And it works this way. So you have the scroll on the top, right? And the user goes from one episode to another in a linear fashion from the left to the right in 15 steps. 12 of them have been implemented so far. You have also a way to choose another episode by going to a screen showing the map on which we are using the Recogito data in a static fashion, and a few points that will be actually links to the episodes, right? So that's the table of contents Sarah was referring to, and we haven't seen it work for the moment, but that's the way it will work. And from that scroll, you can have pop-up images as well, which will contain, for example, the whole images without, well, before they get cropped, and sounds. So what we have for the moment is Gérard Dossard, who is an actor, who had read bits of the Odyssey for the BNF exhibition 10 years ago. So this is the illustration that they've been, well, the sound they've been using as an illustration, but some ancient Greek, for example, might be used as well. So from the scroll, you can go to the sirens or to Circe, going down or up, never mind, with a link to other pages. So this could be extended to cover the whole narrative, obviously, but for the moment, these are the 2 episodes that will be used. The principle for the sirens is that you should have a wall or a kind of mosaic, and you click on one and it enlarges the image so that you can read the text, see the image with the metadata, etc. So this is where the dossier we have compiled in Omeka and elsewhere about reception of these topics will go. The sirens have, and Circe have, a very strong textual component as well, and we want to have several translations, either like this or as images of the Mechanica ancient editions, that is, artifacts, because this is what brings the historical dimension, the depth of the reception to the reader, we think. And now, what seems absolutely impossible, given that we just got a link, we can try this. So it seems to be a blank screen. Can you see the blank screen, Monica?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
And I have to
And
ask, sorry, one of our guests in Hangout to mute, please, because there is a noise. It's not you, Natia. Can you mute yourself? Sorry, 1 second. So, because there is a. Okay, good.
yes.
Yes, Aurélien, now it's perfect.
Good.
Yes, I see your white screen. Yeah.
So this blank space is where there should be something about Ulysses, you know, so that we understand that he's the narrator. And then you scroll. It's better on an iPad, but it does work. And you see that you have several layers. And if I just move a bit, you see that it's moving. So obviously, when we see that, we think, okay, it's nice. We've been helping to select things. We can say this item is not interesting, but it seems to be a whole, you know, jumbling together of historical documents. And what does it actually mean? And the whole, what is at stake? The whole project is about making it meaningful. And this is what we want to do with. Well, saying that the decorative elements should be in the background layer first, or just like this, but not attract attention. You will have passages read. When you click on that, it reads the passage. And in the transitions between the episodes, you can have actually historical documents, like a manuscript or an edition or text. And this is how we would like the thing to work. So you see, the effect is more interesting on an iPad, but there will be a web version like this. I'm just scrolling quickly because I want to go to one of the passages we are dealing with. That's, oh, yeah. Just skipped it because it kept. Okay, that's CSV. And if you click.
Hermès donne le molly à Ulysse. Odyssée, chant 10. Hermès à la baguette d'or vint au-devant de moi qui m'approchait de la maison sous l'aspect d'un jeune homme à sa première barbe, dans le charme de cet âge.
Okay, you see the idea. So you can have any sound like this and a pop-up with the metadata. And from CSA, you will have a link to the mosaic wall of the episode. So I could go on scrolling, but that's basically what I want to say about this. What is interesting is that we still need a first screen introducing Ulysses the narrator, as I said, and the categories for the pages you will access from the scroll have been defined by our group, and this is about making sense of the data we have in the BNF exhibition and in Omeka by trying to compare the ancient traditions, the modern traditions, the way that the characters and the events have been interpreted. Antoine, do you have something to say about that? Just a few words, or?
Not what you already said, most important, but I think this work is major because the way we process these elements has proved we're capable of shedding a real critical light on fairly information and the data, and not just talking to people.
Yeah. Yeah, so not the usual commentary, but some critical aspects in these pages. The next, and one before next heading, is things we know we won't do, as I said. 16, could you go through that?
We made most of the old ones on these things we're not going to do, and we have to decide now when we start contributing as the project is very extensible to students around level. So far, we didn't really choose the text and we to like materials, quality of process to use. But then what we're going to do is not sure at all. Is it in other use that we keep on these projects? So
Yeah, basically, when we freeze the collections in the text and tell them, you do what you want, you can ask questions, but we won't work on it. Anyway, yeah.
So we were wondering if we had to rewrite the Odyssey which produces the event, summarized in books we use. To have a short presentation of it at Hamptons in this fall, which is the longer video when the cursor passes by, or and we get it up. And then we wondered if we could use the extensively online collection of the Monday and Day. And we wonder also if we might have scenes the Oculus Meet work with NRT to do, but I did not.
So basically, 16 was working for some time at France Culture, and she had the occasion to go to the archives, of the national broadcast companies, and we could have chosen snippets of virtually anything. But at the time it was possible, we didn't know how to integrate that and what we could do with that. So it's quite a shame, but we're not going to do that.
And yes, and then the part that I was working on was the references to all the contemporary productions, like Odyssey, and I would have loved to introduce references about films and on the street
comics, yeah,
and like all types of art, but because of the copyright reason. So the last thing is
yes. Next, so my original project was not the historical mapping with the use of an easily accessible tool like Google Earth, but it was a study about the common literary models in gender aspects regarding the rhapsody of success and the fourth and eighth of the dialogue of courtesans by Rossini. Especially, I was stressing the linguistic similarities of the metatextual concept, jealousy, poison grants, and silence. The purpose was to create a presentation based on images, graphics, and statistics. Although because of the complexity of the subject and the lack of the suite of the software, the project unfortunately has been frozen for the moment.
Okay, so that was a personal project component in that collaborative project, and it was more traditional work on Lucian and Homer, then a comparison with digital tools, but there was really a gap with what the project had become, and it was very difficult for Rossini to do it on her own because she was not using the same technologies for memoir. So in the end, this is not something we're going to do. And to finish, what we learned. So the first thing.
First of all, we learned on this project that dividing the work seemed easy, but the actual goals were found and invented in the meeting, especially while exchanging with the students of the edition master. But even among us, we discovered.
Aurélien, sorry, I have to ask you to talk close to the computer because I can't hear you very well. Maybe you have to come close to the computer you're using because unfortunately the audio is not very good. Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so that was about work division.
Sorry, should I
just go on?
Go.
Yes, now is good. Thank you.
So communication was also a challenge of sorts because the means of communication were good and sufficient, but we don't always have the right information at the right time, and things are not always very clear because there are some things you can only settle when you're really in front of the person and you can ask all the questions you need. So we created a Facebook group to exchange directly with the students, but It didn't serve much, though it permitted to have at some point some direct interactions and a more fluid exchange with individual students of the other master edition.
That's what I call the unexpected rescue channel at some point. Yeah. And well, people who've been working on images especially insist that copyright is a strong constraint, as I said before. So what we learned is that this is all about prototyping. So the experience that usually remains implicit lies in all the problems and all the evolution of the project. So I don't think we're disappointed. We know that we don't control the whole thing. That's quite an experience to know that because the schedules are not the same, and because the competencies are not the same, and we're not close enough as institutions, we can't really know what is going to happen in a few weeks' time when we don't touch the data anymore. But we know that it has raised a lot of interest. I mean, in the seminar we mentioned last week, there was a lot of interest, and quite a few people reacted on Twitter, for example, when the project was mentioned. The readers of the blog have been reacting sometimes, and we know that the institutions think that these kind of projects are what we ought to do in a way, because it's good for the institutions, because it means that you have relationship to direct relationship to cultural heritage through the libraries, and it's good to have long-term collaboration between master programs. So this is possibly something that will go on, but we can't really say under what circumstances and in which form. So this was about collaboration, as we started by saying. And I was jokingly referring to that as the syndrome of the flower of chaos, because these little flowers are a kind of symbol of interdisciplinarity. We thought that it was completely unscholarly, and it's something that makes sense in the whole design, because it makes sense to the collaborators, and because you need things not to be only semantic and loaded and scholarly in between the episodes as well, for example. So there were advantages to have such a collaboration, obviously, because, well, it brings motivation, deadlines, technical support in this respect, because this is what they have, institutional framework for what we do, and drawbacks, as we said, like uncertainties, frustration, and they must think quite the same thing as well. But perhaps we have lost time, and it's still unclear sometimes what the scholarly benefit can be, but that might be as well because we're just in it. And we are working for an audience that we're not used to working for. So it's just any reader of such a website application. And the biggest question to us remains, how can we work together in parallel seminars? And I think that this is a question for Sunoikisis as well, not just about the technologies and the topics we should try to integrate in a digital classics curriculum, but also how do we work together when we are not in the same institutions and won't be, but want to do things at the same time in some way. So.
Aurélien, thank you very much. Yes, this is, I totally agree, because, well, Sunoikisis is one example. We are trying to do that. We have these challenges, but in general, for example, I work as a classicist in an Institute of Computer Science, so we have many challenges. As humanists, we are learning to use digital tools, so this is the first challenge, but again, yes, we have the technology that helps us a lot. Now we have this hangout. I am not in Germany, I am in Italy at home, but you are in Paris, and in our hangout we have people from different continents. So it's easy, but in the end it's not so easy, because we have to manage distance, different deadlines. For Sunoikisis, the big challenge, as you know very well, is to combine different academic calendars. In France, you have one, in Germany we have another one, and so on. So this is a, yes, I know, but I don't think we are losing time, at least I don't want to think that. So I'm still optimistic, we have to do that. There is a lot that we have to learn as students, as teachers, so definitely. This is difficult nowadays, so we have many, many opportunities. We have a responsibility, that's the thing. Because if we have a sense of responsibility for our discipline, this is what we have to do. But of course, there are many, many fronts, and then we have traditional classicists who are very skeptical. So we have then we have our institutions. They want something from us. So it's not easy, I know. But your presentation was really excellent. So I thank you very much, and especially for the participation of students. We want the voice of students. We want to know what they think, what they are doing. So I think that you are doing something great. And as we can see, also in one city in Paris, you are in Paris, 2 institutions in Paris. It's not easy in the same city to combine the work, but this is something we have to try to do. So thank you. Well, but I'm talking too much, so we still have a few minutes. I don't know if we have questions in the audience. Please, we have participants in the Hangout. I'm looking, because we also have our YouTube channel and we have people watching this class on YouTube. So questions, please. Don't be shy. Okay, Anise, so I don't know, Aurélien, if you can see. Okay, yes, you can see. Yeah, excellent.
Transformation of the academic genres of text. Yes, where is the commentary? Where is the critical dimension in such work? Yes, that's a vital question. Yeah, definitely. Is it what you meant, Anise? Yes. You know, it's like the early computer programs of artificial intelligence. You just see the answer. Yes. Yes.
Yes, and I think that especially with the example of the Odyssey. So now, so we are still we still think so we still have the text in mind, which is good, but we still depend on a printed culture, which is good. I don't want to say anything bad against the print culture, but thanks to this media, we can rethink the Odyssey, going back to the past. So it's impossible to go back to when the Odyssey, well, and the Homeric poems started, of course, but in any case, this oral part of it, so we can listen to people reading. So this is, I think this is very important. So different media helps us a bit to try to understand these texts. Going back to the text, to the printed text, which is good, but has many limits, of course, as you know better than me, of course, because you're doing this project, so you know that. So we see the Homeric poems on the page, but this is a limit, of course. On a printed page, this is a limit. We want different dimensions. We want to read the text not in a linear form, because the Homeric poems were not meant to be read in this way, or so. So other questions, please. We still have, well, a few minutes, just 2 or 3 minutes. Then I have.
I just one remark is that we see from the response of the other team that they approach it naturally from a very visual culture background and web design background. So what they tell us about what we send them is interesting about the reception of classics now.
I was muted. So yes, definitely, I agree. So one last thing. So we have your so in the class outline, I see that okay, we have links. I think we have links to your project, Omeka, then Trello, because you are using, well, Dropbox, Trello, and so the last website that you showed parallax. Is this one? Yes. Okay.
As soon as there will be something stable, it will be on the blog post.
Okay.
Classique numérique blog.
Okay, perfect. Yes, in the class outline we have the link, yes, to the blog where we have everything, and for the slides. So as far as I understood, so we have the slides of the planning seminar. So are you going to add the slides of today or not? I don't know. It's up to you. Okay. Okay, excellent. So thank you. So if you can add, so you have GitHub. So if you can add the slides. Okay, so Aurélien, thank you very much, and also to your students. It was a great pleasure to have you today for this common session. And next week, again, we will have another group of students, but from the University of Florida, with our colleague Eleni Bozia. She's working a lot with images and inscriptions. So thank you very much for today. And so see you next week, next Wednesday, for another common session of SunoikisisDC. Bye-bye. See you. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.